The old piano sat in the corner of Cafe Allegro, gathering dust most days. Sunlight streamed through the large front windows, catching the occasional glint off its worn brass pedals. It was a beautiful instrument that had seen better days, much like the woman who couldn't help stealing glances at it whenever she passed by with trays of steaming coffee and plates of food. Lily had been working at Cafe Allegro for almost 3 years now. At 32, with dark hair often pulled back and a practical bun and eyes that seemed to notice everything, she moved between tables with quiet efficiency. Regular customers knew her as the reliable waitress who remembered their usual orders and always made sure their coffee cups stayed full. What they didn't know was how her heart ached every time her fingers brushed against the piano keys while dusting. "Table 7 needs their check," called out Mitch, the floor manager, his voice cutting through Lily's momentary daydream as she stood near the piano. "On it," she replied, quickly turning away from the instrument and heading to the register. Most days at Cafe Allegro followed the same pattern. The morning rush of business people grabbing coffee before work. The midday crowd of shoppers and office workers on lunch breaks. The afternoon lull when Lily could catch her breath before the dinner service began. Through it all, the piano waited, played only on Friday and Saturday evenings by hired musicians who treated it with various degrees of respect. Lily had been classically trained since she was 6 years old. Her grandfather, a piano teacher with calloused fingertips and endless patience, had recognized something in the way she listened to music even as a small child. For years, her life had revolved around practice sessions, recitals, and competitions. Everyone had expected her to attend music school. She had even been offered a partial scholarship to a prestigious conservatory. Then life happened. Her grandfather fell ill, medical bills piled up, and the scholarship wasn't enough. Her dreams of becoming a concert pianist faded away as reality took hold. Now, double shifts at the cafe and evening bookkeeping for a local business kept her afloat financially, but the music inside her had nowhere to go. "You're doing that thing again," said Rowan, another server who had started working at the cafe 6 months ago. With friendly eyes and a wide smile, Rowan had quickly become someone Lily considered a work friend. "What thing?" Lily asked, arranging clean silverware into neat rolls. "Staring at the piano like it holds the secrets of the universe," Rowan said, leaning against the counter. "Do you play?" Lily shrugged, keeping her eyes on her task. "A little. A long time ago it was easier this way. If people knew about her background, the questions would start. Why was she waiting tables instead of performing? What happened to her dreams? Sometimes she asked herself the same questions late at night when sleep wouldn't come. Well, you should give it a try sometime when we're closed. I bet you're better than you let on," Rowan said before heading off to greet new customers. The cafe owner, an older woman named Beverly, who had inherited the place from her parents, kept the piano more out of tradition than practical use. "Adds class to the place," she would say whenever anyone suggested moving it to make room for another table. Beverly rarely visited the cafe anymore, leaving daily operations to Mitch, who cared more about the bottom line than atmosphere. The lunch rush had died down when the group walked in. 5 young people dressed in designer clothes, carrying expensive bags, and radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having to worry about money. Lily recognized them immediately. They came in every couple of weeks, usually after shopping at the high-end stores down the street. "The usual table?" she asked, already reaching for menus. "Of course," said the apparent leader of the group, a young woman with perfectly highlighted hair and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. "And make sure it's properly cleaned this time." Lily nodded and led them to their preferred spot near the back, with a good view of both the entrance and the piano. As she wiped down the already clean table, she could feel their eyes on her, evaluating and dismissing her in the same glance. "I'll be right back to take your orders," she said, turning to leave. "Don't rush on our account," one of them called after her, followed by muffled laughter. The cafe had a clear divide between its staff and certain customers. People like Lily, Rowan, and Mitch existed in a different world than the wealthy patrons who viewed service workers as part of the background, there to fulfill needs but not worthy of real notice. Back at the service station, Lily filled water glasses while watching the group from the corner of her eye. They were talking animatedly, occasionally glancing toward the piano. Every Friday a different musician played during dinner service. It was good for business, creating an atmosphere that justified the cafe's slightly higher prices. "Those kids leave the worst tips," Rowan muttered. stopping beside Lily. And they always make such a mess. They're not so bad, Lily replied, though she didn't really believe it. Years of customer service had taught her to see the humanity in even the most difficult people. Just young and unaware. You're too nice, Rowan said with a shake of the head. Did you hear about tonight's entertainment? What about it? The piano player canceled. Some family emergency. Mitch is freaking out because he promised Beverly there would be live music all month. Lily's eyes drifted to the piano again, her fingers unconsciously mimicking the opening notes of a piece she had practiced thousands of times. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to imagine sitting on that bench, losing herself in the music the way she used to. Earth to Lily. Rowan waved a hand in front of her face. You really do zone out when you look at that thing. Sorry, Lily said, picking up the water glasses. Just thinking. Throughout her shift, Lily kept busy with the usual tasks. Refilling drinks, taking orders, delivering food, processing payments. The work was physically demanding but mentally straightforward. It allowed her thoughts to wander occasionally, drifting to memories of concert halls and standing ovations, of her grandfather's proud smile as she mastered a difficult piece. The group of wealthy young people stayed longer than usual, ordering multiple courses and expensive bottles of wine. They seemed to be celebrating something, becoming louder as the afternoon wore on. Lily maintained her professional demeanor, ignoring the occasional condescending comment and making sure their needs were met. Can we speak to the manager? One of them asked as Lily cleared their dessert plates, a request that usually made servers' hearts sink. Of course, I'll get Mitch for you right away. She found him in the office, frantically making phone calls. Table 12 wants to speak with you, she said. Now what? Mitch sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. I've called every pianist in my contacts list. No one's available on such short notice. I'm sure you'll figure something out, Lily offered, though she knew how important the Friday night music was for the cafe's reputation. Mitch followed her out to the dining area, putting on his customer service smile as he approached the group. How can I help you folks today? Lily busied herself at a nearby table, wiping down surfaces that were already clean so she could hear the conversation. We heard your pianist canceled for tonight, said the leader of the group. Mitch's smile faltered slightly. News travels fast. Yes, unfortunately, our regular performer had an emergency. That's too bad, said another member of the group, a young man with an expensive watch that caught the light as he gestured. We were looking forward to some entertainment. I'm trying to find a replacement, I assure you, Mitch said. The group exchanged glances, some of them smirking in a way that made Lily uneasy. Actually, the leader said, leaning forward, we might have a solution for you. Mitch perked up. Oh? Your waitress, she said, nodding toward Lily. We overheard her talking about her piano skills earlier. Lily froze, cloth in hand. She had said no such thing. Really? Mitch looked toward Lily with newfound interest. Oh yes, the young man with the watch added. She was quite boastful about it, actually. Said she could outplay any of your regular musicians. Blood rushed to Lily's face. It was a lie, a complete fabrication. She opened her mouth to protest, but Mitch was already walking toward her, a mix of relief and skepticism on his face. Lily, is this true? You play piano? The group watched with barely concealed amusement. It dawned on Lily what was happening. This was entertainment to them, setting up the waitress for public humiliation. A cruel joke at her expense, she could deny it. Should deny it. Tell Mitch she had never claimed any such thing. But as she looked at the piano across the room, something stirred inside her. It had been years since she had performed for anyone other than herself. In her tiny apartment on the electric keyboard she'd bought secondhand. Fear and longing battled within her. The fear of failure, of embarrassment, of not living up to the promise she had once shown. The longing to feel the keys beneath her fingers again. To lose herself in the music. To remember who she had been before life's detours. She began, her voice barely audible. I used to play. A long time ago. Mitch's eyes widened. And you never thought to mention this? When we're always looking for backup musicians? The truth was, she had deliberately kept this part of herself hidden. It was easier than explaining why she had given up something she loved so deeply. It never seemed relevant to waiting tables, she said. Well, it's relevant now, Mitch said, looking both irritated and hopeful. Can you fill in tonight or not? Just a couple of hours during dinner service. Lily looked past him to the group watching with expectant faces, clearly anticipating her failure, then to Rowan, who had stopped nearby and was listening with surprise. Finally to the piano that had been silently calling to her every day for 3 years. She hesitated, standing at a crossroads. Say no and remain the invisible waitress. Say yes and risk everything, her pride, her carefully constructed walls, the quiet life she had built from the ruins of her former dreams. The cafe seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her answer. Time seemed to slow as Lily stood there caught between her past and present. The wealthy young people at table 12 watched her with barely hidden smirks, clearly expecting her to back down. Mitch waited impatiently for an answer, his foot tapping against the hardwood floor. I need to know now, Lily, he said, checking his watch. Dinner service starts in 3 hours and I need to figure out a solution. Rowan stepped closer, sensing Lily's discomfort. Hey, maybe give her a minute to think about it? This is kind of out of nowhere. We don't have a minute, Mitch replied, running a hand through his hair. Friday nights are our busiest and Beverly will have my head if we don't have music as advertised. The leader of the group at table 12, the young woman with the highlighted hair, chimed in. Oh, don't pressure her if she can't do it. Maybe she was exaggerating her abilities. Her tone made it clear what she really thought, that Lily had been lying. Lily felt her cheeks burn. She hadn't said anything to these people about playing piano. Not a single word. They had made it up entirely and now she was caught in their trap. Say no, and confirm their belief that she was just a waitress trying to seem impressive. Say yes and risk humiliating herself after years without performing. I'll do it, she said quietly, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Mitch's face lit up with relief. Great, you're a lifesaver, Lily. Just a couple hours, nothing fancy. Background music for the dinner crowd. The young people exchanged glances, some of them barely containing their laughter. One of them, a tall guy with an expensive haircut, raised his glass in a mock toast. Looking forward to the performance, he said, his voice dripping with insincerity. Lily nodded stiffly and returned to her work, mind racing. What had she just agreed to? Her hands trembled slightly as she picked up a coffee pot to refill cups at another table. It had been so long since she'd played anything more complicated than simple pieces on her keyboard at home. The grand piano at Café Allegro was another beast entirely, more responsive, more revealing of every mistake. You okay? Rowan asked, catching up to her near the service station. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Lily replied automatically, the standard response of someone who was anything but fine. Did you really tell those rich kids you could play piano? Rowan asked, keeping their voice low. Lily shook her head. No, never. I don't know why they said that. Understanding dawned on Rowan's face. They're setting you up. Those jerks. They glanced over at table 12 with newfound dislike. You don't have to do this, you know. You could tell Mitch they made it up. For a moment, Lily considered it. It would be the sensible thing to do. But something inside her, pride perhaps, or the ghost of the musician she once was, refused to back down. I can play, she said, with more confidence than she felt. It's been a while, but I can do it. Rowan studied her face. Seriously? You're actually a pianist? I was, Lily corrected. A lifetime ago. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. Lily went through the motions of her job, taking orders, delivering food, processing payments, while her mind flipped through mental sheet music, trying to remember pieces she could play without embarrassing herself. Classical music would be safest. Chopin maybe, some Debussy. The cafe crowd usually preferred background music that wasn't too demanding of their attention. The group at table 12 lingered, ordering more drinks, clearly planning to stay for the evening's entertainment. Their casual cruelty gnawed at Lily. What kind of people amuse themselves by trying to humiliate someone just doing their job? She had encountered difficult customers before, but this felt different, more personal, more deliberate. As her shift wound down, Mitch approached her again. You should take your break now, get ready for the music set. Starts at 7, goes until 9, with a 15-minute break in the middle. Just keep it low-key, background stuff. Lily nodded, suddenly unable to speak past the knot in her throat. This was really happening. She retreated to the small employee break room at the back of the cafe, sat down on the worn couch and tried to steady her breathing. From her apron pocket, she pulled out her phone and scrolled through a music app, trying to jog her memory of pieces she used to know by heart. The door opened, and Rowan peeked in. "Hey, brought you some tea." They handed Lily a steaming mug. "Thought you might need it." "Thanks," Lily said, accepting the tea gratefully. Rowan hesitated, then sat down beside her. "So part a pianist, huh? How come you never mentioned it?" Lily stared into her tea, watching the steam rise. "It's not something I talk about much anymore. Were you any good?" Rowan asked, then quickly added, "Sorry, that came out wrong." "I just meant I was good," Lily said softly. "Very good, actually. I was going to study at the conservatory. What happened?" It was a simple question with a complicated answer. Lily took a sip of tea before responding. "Life, money. My grandfather got sick. He was the one who taught me to play. Medical bills piled up. The scholarship I was offered didn't cover enough." She shrugged, as if these events that had altered the course of her life were just casual inconveniences. By the time things settled down, it was too late. "I'd missed my chance." Rowan was quiet for a moment. "That's really tough." "I'm sorry." "It was a long time ago," Lily said, though the pain in her voice suggested otherwise. "So what are you going to play tonight?" Lily scrolled through her phone again. "I'm thinking some Chopin nocturnes, maybe some Debussy. Simple stuff that people can talk over." "I bet you'll be amazing," Rowan said with a supportive smile. "Or I'll crash and burn spectacularly," Lily replied, trying to laugh but not quite managing it. "Either way, I'll be cheering you on." The simple kindness in those words brought unexpected tears to Lily's eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "Thanks." When she returned to the main floor of the cafe, the atmosphere had shifted. The lighting had been dimmed slightly, creating a warmer, more intimate ambiance. The dinner crowd was starting to arrive, filling tables and creating a pleasant buzz of conversation. And the piano, that beautiful, intimidating instrument, waited for her, its lid now raised, revealing the strings and hammers within. Lily approached it slowly, as one might approach a sleeping giant. Her fingers reached out tentatively to touch a key, pressing it gently. The note rang out perfectly in tune. Someone had prepared the piano for tonight's performance, probably expecting the usual hired musician. 15 minutes, Mitch said as he passed by, barely looking at her. Lily nodded and sat down on the bench, adjusting its height. She placed her hands on the keys without pressing them, feeling the cool ivory beneath her fingertips. It had been so long since she had touched a real grand piano. Her small apartment only had room for a compact electric keyboard, which she played with headphones so as not to disturb her neighbors. The wealthy young people who had set this whole thing in motion were still at their table, now joined by a few more friends. They had moved to have a better view of the piano, clearly anticipating a show, though not the kind that would showcase Lily's talent. They expected failure, humiliation, entertainment at her expense. A fresh wave of anxiety washed over her. What if she couldn't remember the pieces she once knew so well? What if her fingers, now more accustomed to carrying trays than dancing across piano keys, failed her? What if— "You've got this," Rowan whispered as they passed behind her, setting water glasses on a nearby table. Lily took a deep breath. Then another. She closed her eyes for a moment, picturing her grandfather sitting beside her on the piano bench as he had done so many times during her childhood lessons. "Music comes from the heart, not just the hands," he used to say. "Play what you feel and people will feel it too." When she opened her eyes again, the cafe had grown quieter. Diners glanced curiously in her direction, waiting for the music to begin. The group that had orchestrated this moment watched with barely concealed anticipation, phones ready to capture what they assumed would be an embarrassing failure. 7 o'clock. It was time. Lily placed her fingers on the keys and began to play the first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The initial notes were hesitant, her fingers remembering the way slowly, but as the melody unfurled like a ribbon of sound through the cafe, something inside her awakened. Muscle memory took over, and the piece that had once been as familiar as her own name began to flow more naturally. The conversations around her didn't stop, but they quieted somewhat as people noticed the music. This wasn't the competent but uninspired playing of the cafe's usual weekend musicians. This was something else, something that, despite the initial hesitation, spoke of deeper understanding and connection to the music. From her peripheral vision, Lily could see the confused expressions on the faces of the young people who had set her up. This wasn't going according to their plan. The waitress was actually playing, really playing, and doing it well. As the first piece came to its gentle conclusion, there was a smattering of appreciative applause. Lily didn't acknowledge it, already transitioning into her next selection. With each note, her confidence grew, her body remembering what her mind had tried to forget. That once, music had been her entire world, and for the first time in years, she felt like herself again. As Lily moved from one piece to another, something remarkable happened. The cafe, usually filled with the clatter of dishes and the steady hum of conversation, grew increasingly quiet. People paused mid-sentence, forks hovering above plates as the music washed over them. It wasn't just background noise anymore. It had become the main event. Lily kept her eyes on the keys, too afraid to look up and see the reaction of the crowd. Her fingers, stiff at first, were now remembering their old confidence. Each note flowed into the next, creating rivers of sound that seemed to fill every corner of the cafe. The Chopin Nocturne gave way to a Debussy piece, Clair de Lune, its dreamy quality perfect for the softly lit evening atmosphere. At the wealthy patrons' table, the mood had shifted. The smirks had faded, replaced by expressions of confusion and, in some cases, genuine surprise. This wasn't the fumbling amateur performance they had expected. The tall guy with the expensive haircut leaned toward the group's leader, whispering something that made her frown and shake her head. "Did you know she could actually play?" he asked. "Of course not," she hissed back. "How was I supposed to know the waitress was some kind of piano genius?" One of their friends, a quiet young woman who had seemed uncomfortable with the prank from the beginning, was now watching Lily with undisguised admiration. "She's incredible," she murmured, more to herself than to the others. Mitch stood near the bar, his initial skepticism replaced by amazed disbelief. He caught Rowan's eye and mouthed, "Did you know?" Rowan just smiled and shook their head, equally captivated by the unexpected talent of their co-worker. As for Lily, the world beyond the piano had begun to fade away. The years of not playing, really playing on a proper piano, melted like ice in the sun. Her body remembered what her mind had tried to forget, the way to lean into a phrase, how to use the pedals to extend a note just so, the perfect pressure needed to make the keys sing rather than just sound. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when her fingers slipped, when her memory faltered, when the rust of years without practice showed through. But these small imperfections only made the performance more human, more authentic, more moving. This wasn't the polished recital of a career musician. It was the passionate return of someone who had lost something precious and was finding it again, note by note. The piece came to its gentle conclusion, the final notes hanging in the air like the last stars before dawn. For a moment, there was complete silence in the cafe. Then, starting from a table near the back, applause broke out. It spread quickly, gaining momentum until the whole room was filled with it. Lily finally looked up, startled by the sound. Every face was turned toward her, many smiling, some even showing the shine of tears in their eyes. The wealthy young people who had set her up were now staring with open mouths, their phones lowered, forgotten in their hands. Mitch was beaming, already calculating how this would be good for business. Rowan was clapping loudest of all, their face lit up with a proud grin. Lily felt her cheeks grow warm. She hadn't expected this. Some polite acknowledgement perhaps, but not this enthusiasm, not this appreciation. She nodded slightly in acknowledgement before turning back to the keys. She still had nearly 2 hours to fill, and despite the warm reception, her nerves hadn't completely settled. What to play next? She let her fingers decide, finding their way to a piece by Einaudi, something more contemporary but still beautiful and accessible. As she played, she began to notice that the dynamics of the cafe had changed. People who had been preparing to leave were settling back into their seats. New customers arriving at the door paused, listening, before asking for tables with good views of the piano. The young group that had tried to humiliate her was having what appeared to be an intense, whispered conversation. The leader kept shaking her head, gesturing toward Lily with obvious confusion. The quiet young woman seemed to be arguing with them, her expression earnest and insistent. After a few more pieces, Lily paused for her scheduled 15-minute break. Her hands were shaking, not from nerves now, but from the intensity of emotion and the physical demands of playing after so long. As she stood up from the bench, she was surprised to find herself immediately surrounded by cafe patrons. That was beautiful. said an older gentleman with kind eyes. Do you play here often? Before Lily could answer, another voice chimed in. Are you a professional? Do you perform anywhere else in town? The questions came from all directions, overwhelming her. Lily, used to being invisible in her role as a waitress, didn't know how to handle suddenly being the center of attention. I'm just filling in tonight, she managed to say. The regular pianist couldn't make it. Well, they should have you play every night, said a woman in a business suit. I'd come back just to hear you. Mitch appeared at her side, smoothly inserting himself into the conversation. Lily is one of our talented staff members, he said, as if he'd known about her abilities all along. We're very fortunate to have her stepping in tonight. She'll be back at the piano after a short break. He guided her away from the crowd toward the back of the cafe. This is amazing, he said in a low voice, his earlier stress completely gone. The place is packed, and people are ordering more food and drinks to stay longer. Why didn't you ever mention you could play like that? Lily shrugged, still processing what was happening. It never came up, never came up. Mitch shook his head in disbelief. Lily, you play like you should be in a concert hall, not waiting tables. No offense. None taken, she replied automatically. Listen, can you do this again? Maybe regularly? We could work something out. Fewer shifts, waiting tables, some nights at the piano instead. Paid, of course. The offer caught her off guard. Playing tonight was one thing, a one-time response to a cruel prank. But regularly? Returning to music in a real way? The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. I don't know, she said. I'd need to think about it. Of course, Mitch nodded eagerly. Take your time. Well, not too much time. 15 minutes, then back to the piano, okay? He hurried off to manage the unexpectedly busy dining room, leaving Lily to retreat to the break room for a moment of quiet. She sat down heavily on the couch, her hands still tingling from the unfamiliar workout. The door opened, and Rowan appeared with a fresh cup of tea. Thought you might need this again, they said, handing it to Lily. Also, you're incredible, and I'm a little mad you kept this secret from me. Lily accepted the tea with a grateful smile. Thanks and sorry. It's complicated. Those rich jerks are losing their minds, Rowan said with obvious delight, sitting down beside her. The one with the fancy watch keeps saying there's no way you're just a waitress. Like being a waitress and being talented are mutually exclusive. What did they think would happen? Lily asked, genuinely curious. Did they really expect me to just embarrass myself completely? Pretty much, yeah. People like that? Rowan shook their head. They don't see people like us as real people with lives and talents and dreams. We're just background characters in their story. Lily took a sip of tea, letting its warmth spread through her. Well, I guess tonight the background character got a solo. They both laughed. The tension of the evening breaking for a moment. Seriously, though, Rowan said, their expression growing more earnest. You're amazing. Like truly gifted. Why aren't you doing this for a living? It was the question Lily had asked herself countless times over the years. The answer was never simple, never just one thing. Financial necessity, yes. Bad timing, certainly. But also fear. Fear of not being good enough. Fear of putting herself out there only to be rejected. Fear of chasing a dream that might forever remain just out of reach. It's a long story, she finally said. Maybe I'll tell you someday. A glance at the clock told her the break was almost over. Lily stood up, straightening her uniform out of habit. Back to work. Back to shining, you mean? Rowan corrected with a grin. When Lily returned to the piano, she was surprised to find the cafe even more crowded than before. Word had spread somehow, perhaps through social media posts by the dinner guests, and now people were standing near the entrance, waiting for tables. The group of wealthy young people was still there, but their demeanor had changed completely. The mockery was gone from their faces, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. The quiet young woman among them caught Lily's eye and gave her a small, apologetic smile. As Lily sat down at the piano again, a hush fell over the room. The weight of expectation pressed on her shoulders. What if the first half had been a fluke? What if her limited repertoire wasn't enough to sustain another hour? She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a moment, and remembered her grandfather's words. Music comes from the heart, not just the hands. Her fingers found the keys and she began to play. For the second half of her performance, Lily felt something change inside her. The nervousness that had made her fingers tremble during the first few pieces had faded. In its place was a quiet confidence that grew with each note. This was who she had been meant to be all along. She began with another, classical piece, but then ventured into territory she hadn't planned, arrangements of popular songs that she used to play for fun in her apartment. A love ballad that had been on the radio non-stop last summer, the theme from a movie everyone knew, songs that made people smile in recognition, and sometimes quietly sing along. A couple near the window started swaying in their seats, hands clasped together on the table. An older man closed his eyes, transported by the music to some private memory. Two friends paused their conversation, attention completely captured by the melody. The wealthy young people who had set up the prank were now watching with expressions ranging from amazement to what looked almost like guilt. The quiet young woman among them had moved her chair to face the piano directly. Completely absorbed in the performance, Lily allowed herself to get lost in the music, letting one piece flow naturally into the next. She played some pieces exactly as written and took liberties with others, adding flourishes or changing tempos to suit her mood. The piano responded to her touch as if it had been waiting for her all these years. Mitch circulated through the cafe, beaming at customers and accepting compliments about the new pianist, as if he had discovered her himself. Rowan continued serving tables but kept glancing toward the piano with undisguised pride, as if Lily's talent somehow reflected on them too. Near the end of the hour, Lily noticed a new customer enter the cafe. An older gentleman with silver hair and an elegant walking cane, dressed more formally than the typical cafe patron. He spoke briefly to Mitch, who pointed toward the piano with an enthusiastic gesture. The man nodded and took a seat at a small table that had just been cleared, his eyes never leaving Lily as she played. There was something about his focused attention that made her nervous again. He wasn't watching casually, like the other customers. He was listening, really listening, with the ear of someone who understood music. She found herself paying extra attention to her technique, trying not to make mistakes under his careful gaze. As 9 o'clock approached, marking the end of her scheduled performance, Lily decided to finish with the piece she had started with, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. This time she played it with more confidence, more emotion, more of herself in every note. It felt like closing a circle, returning to the beginning. But as a different person. The final notes hung in the air for a long moment before the cafe erupted in applause, not the polite acknowledgement of background music, but the enthusiastic response of an audience after a concert. People stood up from their tables, clapping and smiling. Someone whistled. Calls of "Bravo" came from several corners of the room. Lily sat frozen on the bench, overwhelmed by the reaction. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was just the waitress, the invisible person who brought coffee and took orders, not someone who received standing ovations. Mitch hurried to the piano, grinning widely. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, raising his voice to be heard over the continuing applause. "Lily Taylor, one of our own here at Cafe Allegro. Isn't she amazing?" The applause grew even louder. Lily felt her face flush with embarrassment and pleasure. She stood awkwardly, giving a small, uncertain bow. As the applause finally died down and people began returning to their conversations or paying their bills, Lily noticed the wealthy young people approaching the piano. Her body tensed, unsure what to expect. Were they coming to mock her again? To claim this had been their plan all along? The leader of the group, the young woman with the highlighted hair, looked uncomfortable but determined. She stopped a few feet from the piano, her friends clustered behind her. "That was really good," she said, the words seeming to cost her some effort. "We had no idea you could actually play." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. Lily nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The quiet young woman pushed forward. "It was beautiful," she said with genuine warmth. "I played piano as a kid, but never like that. You're incredible." "Thank you," Lily managed to say. "We thought," the tall guy with the expensive watch began, then stopped, apparently realizing there was no way to explain their prank that wouldn't sound cruel. "We were wrong about you," the leader said finally. "And I'm sorry. That's all." She turned abruptly and walked toward the exit, most of her friends following. The quiet young woman lingered. "I really am sorry," she said softly. "For what it's worth, I think you just changed their view of the world a little bit tonight." She smiled slightly before hurrying after her friends. Lily stood there, processing what had just happened, when she noticed the silver-haired gentleman approaching. Up close, he had kind eyes and a dignified bearing that spoke of someone comfortable in his own skin. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent she couldn't place. "I hope I'm not intruding, but I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Thomas Reed, chair of the music department at Westlake University." Lily felt her heart skip a beat. Westlake was the prestigious university across town, known for its excellent music program. "I was meeting a colleague for coffee," he continued, "but she canceled at the last minute. Fortunate timing, as it turns out." He smiled warmly. "Your playing is remarkable. Where did you study?" I didn't," Lily admitted. "Not formally. My grandfather taught me when I was young and I was accepted to the conservatory, but..." She trailed off, the old pain still there beneath the surface. Professor Reed's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Self-taught, essentially?" "Even more impressive." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. "We should talk. The university has scholarship programs for exceptional talents regardless of conventional academic backgrounds." Lily stared at the card in his outstretched hand, unable to move. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen in real life, especially not to people like her. She began, not knowing what to say. "Just think about it," Professor Reed said gently, understanding her shock. "Call me next week, perhaps? We could arrange for you to play for some of my colleagues." Lily finally took the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "Thank you." "I will," he nodded, satisfied. "Excellent. I look forward to hearing from you." With that, he turned and made his way toward the exit, leaning slightly on his cane. Rowan appeared at her side the moment he left. "Who was that?" He looked important. "He's from Westlake University," Lily said, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. "The music department." Rowan's eyes widened. "Are you serious? What did he say?" Before Lily could answer, Mitch joined them, practically bouncing with excitement. "That was incredible. The customers loved you. We've had 3 people ask if you'll be playing again tomorrow." He paused, noticing her dazed expression. "Are you okay?" "I think she's in shock," Rowan said. "Apparently some big shot from Westlake just offered her something." They looked at Lily questioningly. "A chance," Lily said quietly, staring at the business card in her hand. "He offered me a chance." Mitch looked between them, confused but still riding the high of the evening's success. "Well, whatever that means, I'm offering you a regular gig here. Friday and Saturday nights to start. We can work out the details later, but I'm thinking this could be really good for the cafe." Lily nodded absently, still processing everything that had happened in the span of a few hours. This morning she had been just a waitress, her musical talents hidden and mostly forgotten. Now she had played to a standing ovation, received an apology from the people who had tried to humiliate her, been offered a university connection, and possibly a new job doing what she loved. "I need to sit down," she said. Rowan guided her to a nearby chair. Deep breaths. "It's a lot to take in. Is she all right?" Mitch asked, concern finally breaking through his excitement. "She will be," Rowan assured him. "It's just been quite a night." That was an understatement. Lily felt as if she had been picked up by a tornado and set down in a completely different world. The familiar cafe around her seemed transformed, just as she had been. Or perhaps she was seeing it and herself clearly for the first time in years. "What are you thinking?" Rowan asked gently. Lily looked up at her friend, then at the piano that had changed everything, and finally at the business card in her hand. A smile slowly spread across her face. "I'm thinking," she said, "that sometimes the cruelest jokes can lead to the most unexpected places." The cafe was nearly empty now, the last customers paying their bills and gathering their belongings. The piano stood silent, waiting. But not for long, Lily knew. Not anymore. 1 month later, Cafe Allegro had transformed. A small, elegant sign near the entrance now announced live piano music on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings featuring Lily Taylor. The cafe had never been busier, with reservations required for weekend dinner service, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. Lily sat at the piano, fingers dancing across the keys as she played the final piece of her Friday night performance. The cafe was packed, every table filled with customers who had come as much for the music as for the food. Some were regulars who returned week after week, Others were first-timers who had heard about the waitress-turned-pianist through social media or word of mouth. As the last notes faded away, the room erupted in warm applause. Lily stood and gave a small bow, more comfortable with the attention now than she had been that first night, though still somewhat amazed by it all. She smiled at the audience before making her way through the tables toward the back room. "Lily, wonderful as always," said a middle-aged woman who came every Friday with her husband. "Will you play the Beethoven piece again next week? It's our anniversary." "Of course," Lily promised. "I'd be happy to." These small interactions still felt surreal. People knowing her name, making requests, treating her like an artist rather than just someone who brought their food. The change in how customers saw her was just one of many transformations the past month had brought. In the back room, which had once been just a cramped break area, Mitch had created a small green room for Lily, a comfortable chair, a mirror, even a small vase of fresh flowers each performance night. It was his way of showing how much her music had come to mean for the cafe's success. Rowan poked their head in. "You were amazing tonight." "Full house again." They handed Lily a cup of her favorite tea. "Oh, and there's someone here to see you. Says she's from the group that first night." Lily's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Really? Which one?" "The quiet one." "The nice one," Rowan clarified. "Should I tell her you're available, or would you rather not?" Lily considered for a moment. She hadn't seen any of that group since the night of her first performance, though she had thought about them occasionally, wondering if their encounter with her had changed anything about how they viewed the world, or the people who served them. "It's fine," she decided. "Send her in." A minute later, the young woman appeared in the doorway. She looked different somehow, less polished, more authentic. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a simpler outfit, and her hair was pulled back in a casual style. "Hi," she said hesitantly. "I hope I'm not bothering you. I've been meaning to come back for weeks, but—" She trailed off, seemingly unsure how to continue. "It's good to see you again," Lily said, genuinely meaning it. "Would you like to sit down?" The young woman nodded gratefully and took a seat on the small couch. "I wanted to properly apologize for what we did that night. It was cruel and childish, and I've felt terrible about it ever since." "You did apologize," Lily reminded her. "That night after I played." "That wasn't enough," she insisted. "And to be honest, I wasn't even sure you'd remember me specifically." "I do," Lily said. "You were different from the others, less enthusiastic about the prank." The young woman looked down at her hands. "I should have spoken up. I knew it was wrong, but I went along with it anyway." She paused. "I've been thinking a lot about why I did that, why I let myself be part of something so mean. It's made me look at a lot of things differently." There was something in her tone that suggested this was about more than just one prank at a cafe. Lily waited, giving her space to continue if she wanted to. "Anyway," the young woman said after a moment, "I've been coming to hear you play. Different nights sitting in the back. Your music is beautiful. You're really talented." "Thank you," Lily said, touched by the sincerity in her voice. "I also wanted to show you something." She pulled out her phone and brought up a video. This went viral locally. Over 50,000 views now. Lily took the phone and pressed play. It was a video of her playing that first night, starting hesitantly and then growing more confident. The camera angle suggested it had been taken from the wealthy group's table. Her stomach tightened. Was this what they had planned all along? To record her humiliation? But as she watched, she realized the video had been edited with care and respect. There was no mockery, no cruel comments, just her music with a simple caption. "Hidden talent at Cafe Allegro. From waitress to pianist in one night. You posted this?" Lily asked, surprised. The young woman nodded. "After we left that night, I took the video from my friend's phone. He wanted to post it with some stupid caption about how you actually could play, as if it was shocking. I told him I'd do it instead, but I posted something completely different." She paused. "I hope that was okay. If not, I can take it down." Lily handed the phone back, oddly moved. "No, it's fine. I'm just surprised. The comments are really nice," the young woman offered. "People were impressed. Some asked where they could hear you play. I think that's why you've been getting such good crowds." So that explained part of the cafe's sudden popularity. Lily hadn't realized she had gone viral in any sense. She had assumed it was just word of mouth. "Thank you for doing that," she said. "It was kind of you." The young woman shook her head. It was the least I could do after being part of something so unkind. She stood up. I should let you get back to your evening. I just wanted you to know that what happened that night, it changed things for me, made me think about who I want to be. As she turned to leave, Lily called after her. I don't even know your name. The young woman looked back with a small smile. It's Grace. After she left, Lily sat quietly, thinking about how strange life could be. The cruel prank that was meant to humiliate her had instead set her on a new path, and apparently done the same for Grace. Rowan appeared in the doorway again. Everything okay? Yes, Lily said. Better than okay, actually. Good, because Professor Reed is here. Says he wants to introduce you to someone. The past month had been a whirlwind of changes. True to his word, Professor Reed had arranged for Lily to play for his colleagues at Westlake University. They had been impressed enough to offer her a special scholarship program, one that would allow her to study music formally while continuing to work and perform. She had also cut back on her waitressing shifts, now working at the cafe primarily as their featured pianist 3 nights a week. The arrangement gave her time to practice, study, and even start giving piano lessons to a few students of her own. Lily followed Rowan back into the main room of the cafe, where Professor Reed waited with a distinguished-looking woman in a tailored suit. Lily. Wonderful performance tonight. Professor Reed greeted her warmly. I'd like you to meet Victoria Chen, director of the City Symphony. She's interested in having you audition for an upcoming showcase of local talent. The symphony director extended her hand. Professor Reed speaks very highly of you, Ms. Taylor. I'd love to hear you play in a more formal setting. 2 months ago, meeting the director of the City Symphony would have terrified Lily. Now, after everything that had happened, she found herself excited by the possibility. I'd be honored, she said, shaking the woman's hand. As they discussed details of the potential audition, Lily caught sight of Grace slipping out the cafe door. Their eyes met briefly, and Grace gave her a small, encouraging smile before disappearing into the night. Later that evening, after the cafe had closed and the last customers had gone home, Lily sat alone at the piano. The room was quiet except for the sounds of Mitch and Rowan cleaning up in the kitchen. She ran her fingers lightly over the keys, not pressing hard enough to make sound, just feeling their smooth surface beneath her fingertips. So much had changed because of this instrument, because of one night, because of a cruel joke that had backfired in the most unexpected way. She thought about her grandfather and wished he could have seen her play tonight. He had always believed in her talent, even when she had stopped believing in herself. Music finds a way, he used to tell her. If it's truly in your heart, it finds a way out. Lily pressed a key, letting a single note ring out in the empty cafe. Then another, and another. Before long, she was playing again, not for an audience this time, but for herself, for the pure joy of it, for the love of music that had never really left her, even during all those silent years. Outside the cafe window, a few passers-by stopped to listen, drawn by the sound drifting into the night. Among them was a young couple who peered in curiously. Who's playing? The woman asked. It's beautiful. Her companion checked the sign by the door. Says here it's someone named Lily Taylor. Apparently she used to be a waitress here until they discovered she was some kind of piano genius. Wow, said the woman. Imagine having that kind of talent hidden away. They stood listening for a few minutes more before continuing on their way, unaware that they were witnessing not just a performance but a new beginning, a life reclaimed, a passion reborn, a future reimagined. Inside, Lily played on, each note a step further along her new path, each chord a reminder that sometimes life's cruelest moments can lead to its most beautiful transformations.